Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. Now, what are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we save the second half of the show to take live questions. However, we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in, but I want to make sure those questions get answered properly in a video, so we gather them up and we address them here in companion videos. So, without any further ado, let's jump into it and start getting caught up, shall we? We're going to start things off here with the Irish Mug Guy, who writes, man, I'd want to see Catcher on the screen. That's probably Catcher on the Rye, because he was writing in about that before. John, what would you rather see? Best possible adaptation of Catcher or Lord of the Flies? Existing Lords of the Flies are meh. You're not wrong. There's some better ones. The interesting thing about Lord of the Flies is that almost better than any actual iteration of Lord of the Flies on screen, you could see the influence of Lord of the Flies in a lot of other stuff. Like whether you're talking about Hunger Games or whether you're talking about other things like that. There's a lot of different movies that use the motifs from Lord of the Flies and the themes of Lord of the Flies in there. Catcher in the Rye, Lord of the Flies, Holden or Piggy. I mean, the problem with it is I think both are very problematic as screen adaptations. Like you said, they've done Lord of the Flies adaptations, and while there have been decent ones, I don't know that it's ever been done like really as effective as the book itself is. But both of these stories tend to be better suited to the page, and I'm just not sure that you can make an effective movie out of either. But then again, in the hands of the right director and giving them enough leeway to make some adaptation and, you know, make some changes from the book, you never know. I think I still lean with a really good adaptation of Lord of the Flies, so maybe it's just me. All right, next one up is K Major, who writes, John, my number 2 top TV show is Scrubs. I loved Scrubs. Loved that show. And they just started a rewatch podcast with Zach Braff and Donald Faison. This news is glorious. I'll tell you what, I like both these guys a lot. I've had a chance to meet both of them individually, chat with them about both, hang out with them a bit of both. I met Zach Braff years ago at the Toronto Film Festival, and I got to hang out with him for a bit at the after party for a movie that he was debuting there. And then Donald Faison, I actually met him. I met Donald Faison in the bathroom of one of the Star Wars premieres. I kid you not. I was going to the bathroom, and he looks over at me and goes, "Hey, Jedi Council." I'm like, "Yeah." And I didn't realize who it was at first. And then he walked out of the bathroom, and I'm realizing, holy shit, that was Donald Faison. And I got a chance to catch up to him and talk to him a bit after that, which was awesome at the same time. I loved this show. Now, it's unfortunate that it ended, then it got picked up again by another network, only it didn't have Zach Braff, and the show just never worked after that. But I love that, and I think I might have to check out that podcast because that sounds great. Anyway, Garrett Couch writes, quarantine movie suggestion, The Quiet Man, John Ford's last Best Director Oscar and Best Cinematography, a fight scene that rivals They Live, but with purpose and rivals best of the best. Can't recommend this movie enough. You know what? I've never watched The Quiet Man. Now, Ford, I believe he might be the only director in history that he actually won back-to-back Best Director Academy Awards. I don't think it was done again after that. It might have been done again, but he actually won Best Director back-to-back, which is a pretty rare and incredible feat. But that's one I've not seen, but he was truly one of the best directors that doesn't get talked about. When you're talking about best directors, a lot of people don't bring up the name John Ford. If I'm thinking of the right John Ford, hold on a second, because I'm thinking of the guy who directed How Green Is My Valley. Hold on a second, let me just bring this up here. John Ford, IMDb. I just want to make sure about this and make sure I'm not totally talking about somebody else entirely. Where'd we go here? Yes, so I believe he won Best Director back-to-back for Grapes of Wrath and How Green Is My Valley, I believe. He won Best Director in 1953 for Quiet Man. Then he won Best Director in 1942 for How Green Was My Valley. He won Best Director in 1941, which was the back-to-back year with Grapes of Wrath. And he was nominated for Best Director for Stagecoach, and he won another. I didn't realize that. He's won 4 Best Director Academy Awards. His first one was in 1936 for The Informer. I did know about that one. But I did not see that last one he won Best Director for, The Quiet Man. Thank you for the recommendation and bringing up John Ford. I'm going to have to go and check that one out at some point. All right. Anthony Lucalano writes, movie recommendation, Gorgira 1954, my fifth favorite film of all time. I gotta say, wait a second, no, I was about to lie. I was about to say that I've never seen that one either, but let me just make sure this is the one I was thinking about. Yes, that one. I did see that Godzilla film. I did see that one. I was thinking it was another one that I had not seen, because unlike Robert Meyer Burnett, I have not seen every single Godzilla movie. I have not. Robert has seen them all 1,000 times over. I have not, but this one I did see. Fifth favorite film of all time. High praise, Anthony. All right, next up. Lucasfilm writes, we are happy to announce that next Christmas there will be an episode 10, and we are collaborating with Warner Brothers to make it a Star Wars / DC crossover. Ben Solo will be resurrected as White Lantern. Coming to theaters December 21st, Star Wars in Blackest Night. Of course, that's a great comment to put in on April 1st, of course. But it brings up a more serious issue. Right now, we have no idea when we're going to see Star Wars on the big screen again. We have no clue. Now, we were going to get something in, 2022? We were going to get the Game of Thrones guys. Their film was going to come then. Not happening now, or was it 2021? I can't remember. Now, there are rumors of another one taking its place, but we haven't heard anything definitive to lay it out, beyond any doubt that's happening. We haven't got that sort of confirmation. And it is funny. It's weird. It's been a long time. It's been years since we haven't known when the next Star Wars movie is coming. Now, we know we got more Star Wars TV coming, that's for sure, and that's great, Mandalorian Season 2 and all, but we don't know when the next Star Wars movie is coming, or even what that Star Wars will look like post the Skywalker saga. So it's going to be interesting to see where things go. Anthony Lucalano writes, I know most of my fellow filthies have probably seen my other two recommendations, but I also recommend the original Wizard of Oz and Pan's Labyrinth. The original Wizard of Oz is pure magic. It's one of those films that around Christmas time, my family, I go home every Christmas. Didn't get back there this Christmas because of a problem with flights, but whatever. And there are several films we watch during the Christmas holiday. Alistair Sim's A Christmas Carol and the Wizard of Oz. There are a couple of others, but those ones are always part of it. And of course, Pan's Labyrinth. Guillermo del Toro's made some great films. That's the best one he's ever made. And if he makes one that's even better, it'll probably win him another Academy Award. All right, next up, Sam Shaw writes, in years to come, do you think younger viewers will think the Raimi Spider trilogy is boring because it's not part of a larger cinematic universe? I don't think so. Look, I think there is this idiotic trend amongst us film fans that everything needs to be shared cinematic universe. It's stupid. It's stupid. And you know that I love shared cinematic universe movies. I do. I love the MCU, right? But the reality is a lot of the best comic book films of all time were never shared cinematic universe. As a matter of fact, the best films of all time are not shared cinematic universe movies, right? I missed Joker, which just got nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Award, won Joaquin Phoenix an Academy Award, is a non-cinematic universe film. Nobody thought, look, it all comes down to good movies, right? It just comes down to good movies. Because guess what? Being a great movie like Joker, outside of a shared cinematic universe, doesn't make the movie any less great. And making a bad movie or a less good movie, let's say, depending on your point of view, let's say, I don't know, Iron Man 2, that is in a cinematic universe doesn't make that movie any better, right? Put a less good movie in a cinematic universe, doesn't make it any better. Make a great movie outside of a shared cinematic universe, doesn't make it any worse. It all comes down to the individual experience that you have with that individual film. So no, while there is this creepy, stupid, dumb obsession that every single thing has to be shared cinematic universe, there should be stuff in shared cinematic universe, there should be stuff outside of it. While there is that obsession, I think film fans today, and I think film fans in the future, will still recognize that all that really matters is the movie I'm sitting down to watch a good movie or not? And I think that's all that'll really count. So no, I think you can't look back. That's like saying they're going to look back at The Dark Knight and think, oh, The Dark Knight was dumb because it wasn't part of a shared cinematic universe. I don't think they'll do that. And I don't think they'll do that with Spider-Man 2. At least let's hope the future isn't that stupid. All right, next up, Franklin Donahue writes, hey, John, I have a weird question for you in these weird times. Go ahead, hit me with the weird. Is it or has it ever been just one person's job to type out all the end credits for a movie? And if so, how long does it take them? That's an intriguing question. And I'll tell you why I find that intriguing. Because there have been movies I've had to make end credits for. Nothing on the Hollywood scale, mind you. And it doesn't take terribly long. I mean, the longest part of making the actual rolling credits is just gathering all the information. I mean, that's the difficult part. And when you have movies, especially today, that have hundreds, sometimes thousands of people involved that have in one way, shape, or form had their hand involved, whether it was setting up a light, putting in some color in a digital background, whatever, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of hands that touch a movie. And just doing all the research and getting all the names and everything, that's got to be the most killer part. And that's got to be a collaborative effort. I'm sure one person is probably the key head person to get all that information. But then there's probably sub people that also have to like, hey, can you go and get all the names of the visual effects people? All right, you go get all the names of the Australian crew, of all the crew that worked on the shots we did in Australia. Now you go and get the list of all the crew that was involved in the American location. Now you go get the names of all the craft people. Now you get all the names of our administrators, legal, all that kind of stuff, blah, blah. You go get, so it's probably collaborative, but when you think about how many people are involved, holy hell, I have a hard time keeping up when I'm putting together a Facebook event invite to put out to 20 people and I forget names. But it is a big, big task. The actual then accumulating all of it together and putting it into a digital file that makes the credits, that doesn't take too terribly long, but it's just got to be the research of it. And you got to make sure it's done right, because when you leave somebody's name off the credits, that becomes a headache and it becomes a problem. So I've never done it myself, so I don't know for sure, but it sounds like something that could take a little bit of time, to be honest. That's a good question, Franklin. Okay, next up, Captain Chicken Pants writes, John, I know you love Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, but in Clerks 2, where did you stand in that funny argument for best trilogy, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars? Was it tough? There's a great scene in Clerks 2, and that is my favorite Kevin Smith movie. And a lot of people would think, well, if your favorite Kevin Smith movie is a Clerks movie, shouldn't it be Clerks 1? I am unapologetically all team Clerks 2. I love Clerks 2. It has a very important special meaning in my life. That's a very personal reason, but I love that movie. And yes, there was a great debate between, that I think it was Randall has this great spiel about Lord of the Rings versus Star Wars. I am a Star Wars guy. And you know how much I love and adore Lord of the Rings completely and passionately, but I am a Star Wars guy. And so I kind of lean on the Star Wars side. All right, next up, Agent of Stupid Stuff writes, I love the name. How likely do you think movies scheduled in March and April, how likely do you think movies scheduled in March and April, but got delayed, take up the July release dates? A Quiet Place 2 could open with no competition in July. With all the other movies moved out, its marketing from March wouldn't be totally wasted. In theory, that works. Okay, in theory, that works. Here's the problem. When do you know that the theaters will be open in July? We don't know that. So what Rob and I have been trying to talk about a lot lately is the fact that opening movie isn't just about going, there's an open spot in the movie, let's just drop it in. There's this whole process you need to go through that includes a big marketing campaign to raise public awareness of the brand, get everybody excited, get them into the theaters, and that costs tens and tens and tens and tens, sometimes up to $100+ million to do. So you can't say, if you're the producers of Quiet Place 2 or the distributor of Quiet Place 2, you can't just go, let's just say we're going to release it in July. Okay, well, it's already April. And that's just 3 months away. We need to start moving on our big marketing push now. 3 months, I think, normally it's 4. I think 3 months is perfectly fine. So let's invest $60 million in promoting this July release. But you can't do that right now because you don't know that the theaters are going to be open in July. I think there's a decent chance that theaters will be open again in July, but we don't know. There's also a very decent chance that it's not. So that's the problem right now. The question is, when will we know when the theaters will be open? Because listen, if we knew today that the movie theaters will be open 100%, they will be open in July, then yes, you could do that. You could plan Quiet Place 2 to open up in July when the theaters first open up, make it a big celebration of everybody coming back to the movies, launch it with Quiet Place 2, and you can roll out your marketing campaign today. The problem is, today, we don't know that the movie theaters will be open in July, and therefore they can't spend their tens of millions of dollars on their marketing campaign. And we're not going to know if they're going to be opening in July by the end of April either. So that becomes the problem. So I think what will probably happen, I don't know this for sure, I'm just guessing here. This is just a pure guess on my part. What I'm guessing will probably happen is when the theaters do open, they will probably open the way the theaters in China were starting to reopen, which is with older films. So when they were trying to relaunch the Chinese theaters again, they were launching with like Avengers films and Avatar and things like that. That's what I think they'll probably do until, all the other major films know that the theaters are open and have a good run-up time to get their marketing campaigns going. But anyway, that's my guess. Good question, Agents of Stupid Stuff. All right, next up, Tim Platt writes, have you watched Some Good News by John Krasinski? I have, and it was awesome on YouTube. If not, I can't recommend it enough. First episode was only about 15 minutes, and it really helped put me in a better space mentally. As crazy as the world is, we could use some good news. John Krasinski has started this simple little web show, and it's already got like 4 million views of him called, I think it's just called Some Good News SGN. He calls it SGN. There's a big SGN sign behind him that was drawn by one of his kids. And it's just him talking about good stuff. And he does his first episode talking with Steve Carell. Now remember, The Office just did their 15th anniversary. And so it was him and Steve Carell talking over Skype. And it is a great little conversation that made my heart happy. And then he interviewed this girl who has just come home from cancer treatments. And she got this big hero's welcome by her neighbors and everything like that. It's just, he's just telling stories that it makes you feel good. It's an awesome thing for a guy that we would expect no less from a dude like John Krasinski to do. If you haven't seen it, take Tim's advice and check it out. It's really cool. All right, 15 Shades of Geek writes, I stayed up all night thinking of Anthony Lucolano's question, but sadly I came up short. The only actor, that's right, who's the only two actors to be in all three of Doctor Who, Star Trek, and Star Wars. The only actor I know in a Doctor Who, Star Wars, and Star Trek is Simon Pegg. Congratulations, Anthony. You stomped me. I don't know what the other ones would be either. Like Simon Pegg, I mean Greg Grunberg, but there's like 12, 13, 14, 15 different people who are both in Star Wars and Star Trek in some way, shape, or form. But I'm not a Doctor Who guy, so I don't know the Doctor Who angle of that, so I'm not sure. So you're not the only one stumped, 50 Shades. You're not the only one stumped. All right. 2020 Shades of Greek writes, on that note, I did know Ian McKellen, Felicity Jones, and Andrew Garfield were in Doctor Who. Do I get points for that? I don't know. Really? Ian McKellen was in Doctor Who? I had no idea about that. But then again, I'm not a Doctor Who guy, so I wouldn't have known either way. But why not? I'll give you points because I didn't know any of those people were in Doctor Who. All right, Diamond Dog's Puppy writes, sends in a very large tip. Thank you so much, Diamond Dog, for that. Really, we appreciate the support around here. And listen, what I normally like to do is when somebody sends in, on the rare occasion that somebody sends in a tip of $50 or more, not only do I want to honor that by answering the question in the show, I also answer it in its own standalone video in a couple of weeks. So if there's a question in here, I haven't read it yet. If there's a question here, keep your eyes open for that because you'll be getting your own standalone video for this, Diamond Dog. So again, thank you for the support, man. Hello, John and Rob, who's not here right now, unfortunately. I've been listening for a while now. First time writing in. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that, man. During these dire times, you all have been the most essential to listen to. Thank you. Thank you for being a part of our community, man. My question to you both. What order would you place? Con Air, Face Off, and The Rock, and why? Well, I can't speak for Rob, but I can tell you that answer for me is simple. Real simple. The Rock, Face Off, Con Air. Now, I like all of them, but I love The Rock, and I love Face Off. I love it. Con Air is fun. I like Con Air. Con Air's a fun little movie, a fun little Nick Cage movie. You got John Malkovich in there as a villain. Can never go wrong with that. Con Air is great. But I absolutely love Face Off. Take his face off. And The Rock, you know. The Rock I give the edge to over Face Off. Probably, I don't know. I think maybe Sean Connery. Maybe it's all just about Sean Connery being Sean Connery. I love Sean Connery, so he's just that extra little, "You're best. Losers whine about their best." One of the greatest lines in movie history, by the way. Face Off, another one of the greatest lines. "If I let you suck my tongue, would you be grateful?" Just great lines galore. Great lines galore. But yeah, for me, I go The Rock, Face Off, and Con Air. All three winners, but those other two just stand up a little head and shoulders above. For me personally, I'm totally down with that. And by the way, I am totally up. I've been advocating for this for a while. A Face Off remake with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. You're welcome, Hollywood. Send me my commission check. I am totally dying for that. So that's how I personally rank them. But I'm sure everybody will have different answers for that. Guys, if you've got an answer for that, how would you order those three films? Jump on down the comment section below and let Diamond Dog know your thoughts. And again, Diamond Dog, thank you for sending that in and supporting the channel on that level. And keep your eyes open over the next couple of weeks. You'll see this question answered in its own standalone video. All right. Thanks a lot for that, man. Next up, Russell Amador writes, "Hey John, quick rundown of what I ran into during this morning news run. According to reports, the start date for Spider-Man Work From Home Spider-Man Work From Home has been delayed due to the current state of the world. Also, Don Cheadle apparently playing villain in Space Jam 2. Yeah, here's the funny thing. Anything could be true about Space Jam 2, but I wouldn't trust any news I get on April 1st. Even though it seems like most of the news sites this year are foregoing the normal fake news stories that you do on April 1st, April Fool's Day, I would still be wary of any news things that came out today. I would still be very, very wary, but that Spider-Man Work From Home thing, I like that one. All right. Daniel writes, "Do you keep a copy of all your videos? How much disk space is all of that? Just curious." I do not. There's just too much. Just for instance, even at, modest, I keep the bit rate fairly low. Even though the video quality is really good on the John Campea Show, I still keep the bit rate relatively low. It ends up being about, how big does it end up being? I want to say 4 or 5 gigs for one episode of the John Campea Show. I don't keep copies of them. They're online and they're on YouTube. And if I need to, I can go and download them from YouTube, maybe at a slightly lower quality. But that's probably, I just can't be bothered. I really should get some big hard drive servers and back up a copy of every single episode. I really should. But I can't afford that expense, and I can't afford that time either. Plus, if I really need them, I can just go and grab them online and everything like that. And, it should be all good. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. There we go. Zaya writes, "John, if you could punch one movie character in the face really good, whom would it be? For me, it would be Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame." Oh, well, somebody else brought up Frollo the other day as a truly great movie villain. Because it really is. It's a fabulous, fabulous movie villain. Who would I punch in the face? What's a good, maybe Wormtongue? Wormtongue needs a good punch in the face from Lord of the Rings. So yeah, now maybe if I thought about it longer, I would come up with another name, but I will stick with Wormtongue, the little son of a bitch. I will go with Wormtongue because that guy irritates me so freaking much, which is exactly what the character's supposed to do. So I suppose he's doing a good job. Joshua Stevens writes, "Just watched the Turkish film Miracle in Cell Number 7 on Netflix, and oh my God, easily my top 10 of all time, and couldn't recommend this movie more." Well, not surprising that as a Netflix film, I've never heard of it because Netflix does a terrible, terrible job of marketing their films. However, Miracle in Cell number 7, it's a 2019 film. Let me see if I can find out more about here. A story of love between a mentally ill father who was wrongly accused of murder and his 6-year-old daughter. Okay, that's just heartbreaking right now. That's just heartbreaking. The original name is Seven Kagustaki Muskiz. I'm sure I'm brutally mispronouncing that in Turkish, but okay, that's got a little bit of a Life is Beautiful sounding tone to it. That's got a little bit of a Life is Beautiful, and you know how much I love Life is Beautiful. Yeah. Again, I've never heard of this. I might have to check this one out. Thank you for putting on all of our radars, Joshua. All right, next up, Trev Fishbean writes, Lucasfilm should do a Crimson Dawn series featuring Kira and Maul with Solo guest starring occasionally that would also tie into the Kenobi series / movie. I just don't see there being any success there. I don't see there being any hunger there. I don't see there being any success there. There was simply not enough response to the Solo movie. And so if you're Lucasfilm, do you go and invest $100 million more into that particular aspect of the franchise when there are countless other avenues with never before seen characters and never before heard stories and never before touched upon locations and stuff like that? When you have an infinite number of stories you can tell, do you really want to go back and invest more money into an aspect of your franchise that came up really short? I think the answer to that question is clearly no. I just don't think it would be a good idea. Now, would I, as someone who very much did appreciate Solo, be interested in seeing such a thing? Oh yeah, I'd be interested in it for sure. But if I'm an executive at Disney, look, sometimes you've got to make the logical choices. It makes no logical sense to do that. It makes no logical sense to invest more money into this property that has lost you money already, especially when you can do countless other things. So it's something they could do, but honestly, I got to tell you, Trev, I would be against it. If I was on the board of Disney, I would be against it. I don't think it makes any sense. I just don't. Even though I, as a fan, would be curious to see it. All right. Iconic Reactions writes, gotta say Hancock's score is so underrated as hell. I don't really remember the score to Hancock. I just remember the movie was really good. And it's one of those films, and it's a Will Smith film for those of you who don't remember it. Charlize Theron is in it too, and she's great. It's one of those films that I never understood why it didn't get a sequel. It was fun, it was good, had a big star in it, and it made money. And it was practically begged to have a sequel. The way the story went and the way the movie ended practically begs for a sequel. I will never understand why they never did another one. I will never understand that. Now, I can't remember the score, unfortunately. But again, it's just, they really should have done another one, and I do not know why. An anonymous viewer writes, greetings from South Texas, John. Well, greetings. I just wanted to thank you for inspiring me to get off my butt and actually do something about my dreams. I'm only 24 and I'm going back to school again to be a paramedic. Looking forward to the journey ahead. Thank you. Dude, that is awesome. I love hearing stuff like that. Love it. It is never too late to go back to school. First of all, right there, it is never too late to go back to school. I was 30 when I decided to go back to school. And I've never regretted it. It has done nothing but serve me well, that extra education that I got. It has always served me well. And I love the fact too many people, this is truth. I'm going to hit you with some truth right now. There are too many people right now who, I don't know if it's because of American Idol and stupid shit like that. There are too many people that want to sit on their ass and wait for somebody to come walking along and hand them their dreams. They're just, when it comes down to it, people are lazy. We by nature are lazy, and we all have to fight it. I have to fight laziness. You have to fight laziness. We are all lazy by nature. All right. That should be a name of a rap group, Lazy by Nature. Anyway, we are all lazy by nature. You got to be, and too many people just want things handed to them. It is daunting. It is intimidating. It's a little bit scary to actually get off the couch. It's scary to then take a step, to commit to going back to school, to commit to studying this, to commit to putting in the unnamed hours it'll take to do this. People don't want to do it. They want their dreams. They don't want the sacrifice it'll take to get to their dreams. And the fact that we have people like you who are like, I've got something I want to do. You know what? I'm not just going to sit around. I'm going to get off my ass and I'm going to go do something. More people need to be like you. So thank you for doing it. And number two, thank you for sharing your story and being an example for me and my lazy ass and all the rest of us as well. So good on you. All right. Gane1 writes, Mission Impossible Fallout soundtrack is fire. Lauren Balfe is a genius. We were talking about Lauren a little bit earlier today because he just replaced the composer of Black Widow. We talked about that on the John Campea Show earlier. And he's done some really, really good stuff. Like, I'm not a big fan of Six Underground, but I really did like the music to it, right? I thought the music to Bad Boys for Life was great. He's done a very good job, and he did a very good job with Mission Impossible as well. So I'm down for it. It's an unusual story, but I think it could work out very well. All right. Tinnis Flato Mendoza writes, Winona Ryder left Godfather 3, so Coppola put Sofia Coppola in last minute. How different is Godfather 3 with Ryder instead of Sofia? It's hard to say, but listen, Sofia Coppola clearly, in her genes and in her genetics and in her DNA, she picked up some of her father's directing genius because she is a terrific director. Not a great actress. And so look, not only was the character that she played in Godfather 3 not the strongest character, but I don't know how much of that was actually the character and how much of it was poor performance, especially when you've got her in there surrounded by powerhouse performers, right? Powerhouse performers. Whether it's an Al Pacino or a Diane Lane or Andy Garcia or whatever, she was surrounded by powerhouse performers. And a good performer will look bad when acting beside powerhouse performers. So if you had gotten somebody like Winona Ryder, who's a very talented actress, in there, it might have improved it. It might have improved it, but it's all speculation and we'll never know for sure. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, I work at a grocery store and I'm grateful to still be working hard during this difficult time. First of all, thank you. I mean, seriously, it sucks and it's embarrassing and it's a shame that it takes something like the situation we have in right now to realize we need to really appreciate the people who function in all aspects of our society. And I have never been more grateful. And I feel ashamed that I've never felt this gratitude before, but I do now. I've never been more grateful to the people who do their jobs to make sure I can just do something as simple as go to the grocery store and go and pick up a bottle of peanut butter that somebody made sure was stocked on that shelf. And that I was able to go get it, get into a line, pay for it, have somebody bag it for me, take it. I've never felt the type of gratitude that there were people there doing their jobs like that till now. So thank you for doing your job. Anyway, I just wanted to ask if you've seen 12 Monkeys, the movie. I have, as a matter of fact. Had too much wine last night with my girlfriend and we were completely lost. Stay safe. Thanks again. Hey, listen, there are a lot of people who get lost in that movie even without drinking a bunch of bottles of wine. So there's that. Brad Pitt, by the way, one of my, if not my favorite character actor in all of Hollywood, David Morse, is brilliant in that film. Don't be too hard on yourself, buddy, because it can be a little bit of a tricky and challenging movie to follow. It can be a little bit of a tricky and challenging movie to follow. So even if you hadn't drunk it, you might have felt a little confused at the end. It's, by the way, I think it's a really good movie, but, and one of Brad Pitt's best performances, by the way, one of Brad Pitt's best performances. So, maybe try watching it again when you're not on the sauce. Try it again. All right. Joe Hill writes, the ugly truth rules, hashtag flick the bean. I was mentioning it earlier today. Other than 300, my favorite Gerard Butler movie, I know nobody else will agree with me, and that's perfectly fine, is The Ugly Truth. I find that movie freaking hilarious. Everybody else disagrees with me, so I'm glad you're on my side with that, Joe. All right, an anonymous viewer writes, John, with Black Adam, do you think they will go the villain route or anti-hero with Dwayne Johnson? Seems like he'd be anti-hero. Yeah, I think they might start villain. The way I think they might go with Black Adam, they might start off villainous, but at some point he's going to end up anti-hero, right? Now, I don't know if he's going to have that full journey in the first Black Adam movie, or I don't know if he'll go full villain in the first Black Adam movie, and then by the time we catch up with him in, say, Shazam 2, by then he starts that road to anti-hero. So, I mean, I don't know, but one way or another, it's going to end up anti-hero. Of that, I have very, very little doubt. And really, if you know the comic character, that's not a stretch. It's not a stretch. So he will end up anti-hero at some point for sure. All right, Luis Dotson writes, Thoughts on Vantage Point 2008? I need more movies like it. Would love a more action-oriented film in that style. Gerard Butler could star, LOL. Well, of course, we were joking a lot about Gerard Butler earlier, but I'll be honest with you, as neat of a concept of it is, like a supposed assassination of an American president seen from the vantage point or point of view of a bunch of different people, and an incredible cast: Dennis Quaid, Matthew Fox, Forrest Whitaker, Edgar Ramirez, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, William Hurt, on and on and on. Honestly, though, by the end of it, it felt like the sum was not as great as its parts, and I actually didn't think it was all that good. Great concept. Wouldn't mind seeing a slightly more simplified, slightly more focused, maybe one with a Gerard Butler. Why not? But as it is, not a big fan of the film. That movie's got to be like over 10 years old by this point, too. Anyway, Finding Neo writes, thoughts on Solo animated series? Again, I don't see why we need to go back to Solo. Why keep going back to characters we already know? I wouldn't be against it, but I would say why? What's the point? Why not do new things instead of old things? So that would be my thought. All right, Asian Movie Enthusiast writes, I strongly recommend The Night Comes for Us on Netflix. It's one of the most purely entertaining action/thrillers from the last decade. And again, thing I've never even heard of. Hold on a second, what's it called? The Night Comes for Us. All right, it's a 2018 film. Oh, I take it back. I have heard of this. But I have not seen it. You've got the guy from The Raid with Iko Uwais. I always mispronounce his name. Is in that as well. I have heard of this, but I have not seen it. And I certainly didn't know it was on Netflix. So there's that too. Netflix is great, but as is a common refrain around here, they are terrible at marketing their own films that are on their network. All right, but thank you for the recommendation, Asian Movie Enthusiast, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to check it out now. I know now it's on my radar. All right, Pedro Lopez writes, have you seen BJ Penn versus George St. Pierre 1? One of my favorite fights. Second one was one-sided. Yes. Oh, I've seen all the George St. Pierre fights. Let's just assume I've seen all the George St. Pierre fights. He is my all-time favorite fighter. And his fights with BJ were great. And a lot of BJ's fights on his own were great. But yeah, he could outclass. BJ was like, I believe, I could be wrong, I think BJ was the first guy to hold belts in two different divisions. Not at the same time. But he reigned in the lightweight division for a while. Before he ran into Frankie Edgar, he reigned in that lightweight division. But yes, seen every George St. Pierre fight. All right, next one up. Paul Goulart writes, has a film changed your view in one of life's greatest treasures, marriage/childbirth? Mine is Life is Beautiful. I wanted to be the father and husband the main character was in the film. I think not about marriage, no. I've never seen a movie that changed my life, changed my viewpoint about marriage or parenthood or anything like that. A lot of great movies about marriage and parenthood that are inspiring for sure. But very, very few movies have changed like my whole perception of life. Like that Mr. Rogers documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor? That one was, that just changed the way you saw the world. That's one that one of the things I said, and maybe some of you have heard me say this before, when there are movies, good movies make you kind of, what's the best way to put this? Great movies make you change the way you see the world. Remarkable movies change you. Great movies change the way you see the world. Remarkable movies change you. And that was the kind of movie that to me sort of changed me. Now, again, I haven't had that sort of experience with like marriage or having kids kind of movies. Maybe it will once I become a parent, but for now, no. But the closest one I can say is that Mr. Rogers documentary. Anyway, great question, Paul. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. SM writes, in your opinion, which MCU trilogy is better, Iron Man or Thor? I didn't include Cap because his trilogy is my clear number one out of the three main Avengers trilogy. Thanks, Thor. Because I think Thor 1 is better than Iron Man 1. That's an unpopular opinion, but it is mine. I really like Thor 1 or Iron Man 1, but I love Thor 1. I think Thor 1 is the second most underrated comic book film in history. I think Thor 2, while a big step down from Thor 1, is still better than Iron Man 2. And I clearly think Thor 3 or Thor Ragnarok is better than Iron Man 3. So to me, it's a clean sweep across the board. So I will go Thor. The Thor trilogy is better than the Iron Man trilogy. Now, you could have a different point of view on that and talk about the importance of, obviously, the importance of Iron Man 1 cannot be overstated, obviously. But overall as a trilogy, yeah, I go the Thor trilogy. Good question, though. All right, John Early writes, how much do you like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight? I mean, I like them a lot, but I can't bring myself to love or even like Rises. It's a bad threequel. I am not a big fan of The Dark Knight Rises. And a lot of people get mad at me because you're supposed to like every Batman movie directed by Christopher Nolan. And I don't dislike Dark Knight Rises. Don't get me wrong. I don't dislike it. I do like it. But it's not a great movie, in my opinion. I very much like Batman Begins, but I love The Dark Knight. I love that movie. There are even some people out there who think Batman Begins is even better than The Dark Knight. I know a number of people who actually think the best movie in the trilogy is the first one. But the majority of people, including me, I'll go along with the popular crowd in this one. I rarely do, but this time I will. I really love The Dark Knight. I love that movie. And I really like Batman Begins, got it all started. And I like Dark Knight Rises, but to me it was quite problematic. I had a number of issues with Dark Knight Rises, so I do not, love that film. Let's just say that. I do not love that film. All right. Hisoka Maro writes, John, please go rewatch Ozark. Nah, I gave it a shot. It's not a show that's for me, and that's totally fine. I know a lot of people that love it. You clearly love it, but I got too many other things backed up that I really am interested in watching and that I haven't had time to get to yet. So I'm not going to bump something out for another show that I already gave a shot to. I mean, look, I don't know. At some point, maybe I will. I'm getting a lot of people telling me that it gets better because Ann and I watched the first 4 or 5 episodes and, we didn't hate it. It's just, it wasn't for us. It didn't work for us nearly as well as it did for a lot of other people. But so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, we'll see. Tim Platt writes, now I'm going to tell you my whole plan, and then I'm going to come up with some absurd and convoluted way to kill you, and you'll find an equally convoluted way to escape. Sounds good to me. Well, this ain't that kind of movie. I love this movie. I can't remember off the top of my head what movie that is. I mean, it sounds like a movie. Sounds like it'd be from a movie I've seen 1,000 times, and I cannot think off the top of my head which one it would be. But probably everybody's yelling at their computer monitor right now that I'm not getting it. RPG with DBJ, the dreaded DM writes, role-playing game idea. Jurassic Park. An island is a bounded location filled with mythological monsters, various buildings, weather hazards, and NPCs. It's not a bad idea. A Jurassic Park role-playing game. A buddy of mine, Rodney, he actually designed and wrote his own role-playing game that actually got published. It's a Western role-playing game. I sucks that I can't remember the name of it right now. But the idea of a Jurassic Park role-playing game, that's not bad. Although, I mean, the only problem with the Jurassic Park role-playing game is that literally the only thing you do is run. Right? Like the only thing you do in a Jurassic Park role-playing game is run and try to survive. There's not really like fighting certain monsters or anything like that, but I don't know. There could be an interesting approach to that one. All right. Hoser Miaz writes, breaking news, Man of Steel 2 is happening in 2022. Yeah, don't buy anything you read like that on April 1st, my friend. Jake Iyer writes, recently saw The Man from Earth. Highly recommend. We were talking about that. Rob went into detail on that one a little bit earlier in the John Campea Show. Go back and check out his commentary on that. Thank you for your follow-up recommendation on that, Jake. All right, Iconic Reactions writes, just seen Wanted, and my God, James has grown in his acting. Also, it's a very underrated movie, and Morgan Freeman as the villain was gold. Shoot this MF. Yeah, I really, really like Wanted. Angelina Jolie in it also is fabulous. And I don't care what anybody says about the reality or the verisimilitude of it. That shot that was in the trailer, the spinning car, and she gets into the car firing her gun, that just looks so awesome. And I love the end of it. And that is a movie that should have been turned into a franchise. And they came really close. The biggest obstacle they faced was how to bring back Angelina Jolie because you needed to have her. She was the big star. But I would have been down, and I know everybody has problems with the Loom of Fate. I liked the Loom of Fate. It's as plausible as anything else mythological you could do, so why not? The Loom of Fate, sure. I like Wanted a hell of. By the way, Chris Pratt is in that movie too. Before anybody knew who Chris Pratt was in that movie. And he has a really small but really funny part in that movie as well. All right. Avery Zavala writes, better bathroom fight scene, Mission Impossible Fallout or Raid 2? Raid 2, although the Mission Impossible Fallout fight scene is all types of great. I love that. You know, one of the things I love about Tom Cruise too, Tom Cruise isn't one of these, there's a lot of movie stars that are like, if I'm in a fight scene in a movie, I can't lose, right? Tom Cruise isn't one of those guys. Tom Cruise is like, hey, the most important thing is making a great, fun movie. And if that means my character gets the crap kicked out of him a little bit, then my character gets the crap kicked out of him a little bit. And I love that about Tom Cruise. And he certainly does get his ass handed to him a little bit in the fight, but it's a great fight. It's a wonderful, wonderful fight. But I got to go Raid 2. All right. An anonymous viewer writes, Keanu Reeves also played a villain in a 2000 movie called The Watcher. Oh, you know what? You're right. This came up earlier because it's like, man, I would love to see Keanu Reeves play a villain. But then I've had a few people mention a couple of movies reminding that he actually has played a villain in. He is a serial killer and James Spader is an FBI agent. Not a recommendation really because I remember it not being all that good, but it does exist. Stay well. So this, of course, all comes back around to that notion that's floating around of Keanu Reeves playing the villain in Hobbs and Shaw 2. Something that is far from being a lock, but it is definitely something that I know for a fact they are discussing and talking about. Whether or not it happens, who knows? They're not that far along yet. But it would be damn cool. And it has been a while since we've seen Keanu Reeves play a villain. And I just think the idea, the deliciousness of like him fighting Jason Statham on screen is too good to pass up. Or him and his style versus The Rock, which is much like The Rock and his style versus Jason Statham and his style. But whatever combination you have in there, I think would be awesome. Make him the voice in the background of the big bad guy from the first Hobbs and Shaw. Make him that guy. Sign me up. I'm all for it all day, every day. All right. Casper Arrow writes, hello, John. To me, Eliza Kazan is one of the GOATs. He was controversial figure, but brilliant. It bugged me when the likes of Ed Harris, Nick Nolte, and Sir Ian McKellen refused to applaud him for his honorary Oscar. What do you think of Elijah and his work? And yeah, just to be clear, it is Elijah, not Eliza. To begin, listen, this is the dude who directed, On the Waterfront, Streetcar Named Desire, East of Eden, America, and a few other things. Now, the problem is, this is where the problem comes in, is that whenever it was back in the 50s or 60s, the whole blacklist thing, the un-American, hearings and all that kind of stuff. He actually, Kazan ended up being on the wrong side of history. And he gave testimony that irked a lot of people and actually ended some people's careers. And a lot of people in the entertainment industry, particularly those who may have been around at the time, have never really let that go and have never really gotten over that. Now, there's a couple things from how I feel personally. Number one, I don't care what other people's personal opinions are on certain politics or whatever, and I try not to get too worked up about it. I don't get too worked up over what he testified about. I may not have liked it, but whatever. I also don't get worked up over what other people's responses are to it. So somebody like a Nick Nolte or an Ian McKellen, who may have been around and remember that era very well and how that sort of testimony impacted what they did, I can understand. But I don't see why anybody else would be upset, like why Ian McKellen feels the way he does about something. Like why... By the way, I don't understand why anybody gets upset at somebody else for how somebody else feels about something. Not about what somebody else does, but how they feel about something. And listen, if they thought what he did was really egregious and they just chose, like, they didn't get up and throw things at the stage. They didn't get up, Ian McKellen didn't get up and piss all over the stage or anything like that. He just chose not to applaud him or to honor it. That's his right. So I don't see any need getting upset about. Look, it's before my era. All I know is that he was a great director who directed a lot of great all-time classic films, did Brando a number of times. But I know he was on the wrong side of history, but I didn't live through that era, so I can't appreciate it as much as a lot of other people do, to be honest. So I'm a little bit up in the air with that, Casper. I got to say, I'm a little bit up in the air on that. Anyway. Thanks for writing that in. Next one up. Artur writes, hey, John, which sequel is the best? Terminator 2, Godfather Part 2, Aliens, Spider-Man 2, The Dark Knight, Toy Story 2, The Two Towers, or The Bourne Supremacy? And which one would you erase from existence? Love the improvements on the show. Thank you so much for that. The best of them is easy. That's The Godfather Part 2. Listen, there are a lot of people in the world, and there are a lot of cinephiles that believe that Godfather 2 is not only like maybe the greatest sequel ever made. There's a lot of cinephiles who believe The Godfather Part 2 may be the greatest movie ever made, period, and stop. Right? There's not a lot of discussion or a lot of movement on a large amount of people feeling like Terminator is the greatest film of all time. There's not a lot of movement or momentum for people feeling Aliens is the greatest film of all time. I'm sure there are some people who think that, but there are a lot of cinephiles in the world who think Godfather 1 might be the greatest film of all time. But there's also a lot of cinephiles in the world who feel like Godfather 2 is the greatest film of all time. And when you got that in there, it's hard to make an argument for something else. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go Godfather Part 2 personally. I love all of them. They're all great, but I got to go Godfather Part 2. It becomes a much more interesting discussion if you take Godfather Part 2 out of the discussion. Because then you're talking Terminator 2, Dark Knight, Aliens, Spider-Man 2, Toy Story 2, which, by the way, is 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Then it becomes a much more interesting debate and a much more interesting conversation. But if you're going to leave Godfather Part 2 in there, yeah, I got to go Godfather Part 2. That's just me. Anyway, guys, there are more questions, but I believe all the rest of the questions came after the show ended today. So we'll save those questions for tomorrow's The John Campea Show. With that being said, guys, that will do it for me for this installment of the companion video. We are now all caught up on all the questions that got sent in for today's earlier show. Guys, thank you so much for being here. And listen, special thank you to all of you guys who sent in those questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported the channel while you were doing it. And all of us here on the John Campea Show, thank you guys very much for all of your support. Don't forget, guys, the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow. Hopefully you'll come by and spend some time with us. That will do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name is John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.